Basically, I have it, first of all, it's only 7 strings, so I tuned it to a gap scale. I have the range of an octave. I think I just, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, flat and 7th, 8. So I would just, if I was using this, I would use it just... I'll use it a combination of that stuff, and then I may want to, pluck it too. Or else do those kind of things with the finger. And obviously something like this would be very affected, if you were for storytelling, playing with another instrument, percussion, playing in a procession if you're going down, to do whatever you're doing in a procession. So it's obviously a little, it's more wieldy than the harp. And always in ancient times you hear people, going through the, triumphing through the towns with lyre players or a procession of something, or even King David supposedly was playing, walking before the Ark of the Covenant and stuff like that. So you can see why it's portable.
Right.
It certainly is a good pitch giver for a voice, to keep the voice for. So that's, I think, the essence of this instrument really, as opposed to something like this, which is a little more complicated. Harp with so many strings. It is, first of all, harder to strap on and walk with it, and also you're concentrating more on playing melodic things rather than rhythmic phrases and things like our pitch giving things. So, but, it has a very, this instrument has a pretty good, it's almost like a harp, it's a very harp-like sound. Small instrument, it doesn't mean it has to sound like some puny Bach, Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the tone just keeps giving.
It's a beautiful sound.
It's rich. Wow. Shocking.
It's hollow. Clear to here.
Yeah.
And
the
that's
arms
why.
are hollow. Yeah. So that's what would give the beautiful
length
sound.
of anything.
Yeah.
Makes what you're going to get out of it.
But it's would sound good for the voice with another instrument, percussion or something like that, and then could always do more complicated things on the harp too. But definitely, they were always distinct instruments. Way back in antiquity, they were different. Even though they're mistranslated, so they're calling harps lyres or lyres harps. Or,
got it.
Or
So this is the family that evolved into guitar and cello and
that's
all those.
debatable too. Not really.
No?
No.
Well,
No.
Because there were families of things called tambours
Okay.
in various countries going back.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't consider that in the same family then?
No, they're musicologists because, things with a neck, cello, banjo, guitar, lute, mandolin,
Which are without frets.
Yeah, with or without frets are considered the lute family. This is always considered a distinct family. Musicologists.
A distinct family.
Yeah, a distinct family from that. So the main groups they classify are harps, lyres, lutes, and the other family they consider are psalteries or zithers, which are just the strings over a whole board, like a dulcimer or a cymbalum or an auto harp or something like that, or a piano in a sense.
All right, so they're considered.
So those are the four
family.
string instruments families. Musicologists, of course.
Okay.
Back then they weren't musicologists, so who knew what they thought? They may have thought, there's a debate, in all these crazy musicologists that when they're speaking of instruments like lyres, well, they're lyres or harps. Well, if they're like lyres, they're harps. So who knows what they were, but they were all kicking around at the same time. It's not like the harp replaced this; they existed, they coexisted.
Because there were harps.
Yeah.
Not exactly like this, but
in ancient Greece,
in ancient Greece,
with the columns.
This was more popular
Yeah,
for some reason. There's more spoken of.
Yeah.
and more pictures on vase paintings of this than art.
And in Greece, Plato, and was it Plato? Plato, in I think in the Ethics, or one of those crazy books that he's telling about the ideal state, he says he would ban makers of the harp, makers and players of the harp from his ideal city, and only have the lyre, because the harp allows more modulations and more sensual music. So he wanted things, nice and strong, and not to corrupt people. So I guess this wouldn't corrupt people, but this would corrupt people.
I'm definitely corrupted.
One of those guys, when Plato or somebody was wanted to go around, anybody he found that had an extra string on their lyre, and cut them off.
Yeah. The Greeks used 7 at one point, and that was first, like supposedly when Hermes in their mythology invented it, only had 4. And it was called the tetrachord, which was the base of also the tuning. And then what happened was, eventually it became 7 was the standard. So this would be like in very pre-classical Greece and early classical, the standard. People started adding more strings. And it was in Sparta, I remember the story goes, that some traveling bard came and he added 2 more strings to the lyre, and the king, I forgot his name, came in and cut him off. And he said, don't mess with music. In other words, don't do this. Music has to stay pure as in the form. So they were conservative people, always wanted to keep it, adding strings. By the Roman times, they did have lyres with as many as 11 or 13 strings, by the Roman. And really, if you go, there's, I don't know if you ever go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, they've just reopened the Greek-Roman wing. They just put a new installation. It's wonderful. And there's an actual wall painting from Pompeii of a woman playing a lyre. And it's exactly shaped like this. Very long, thin, with about this many strings, and she's like sort of tuning it like this. It looks like it's brown wood. Has a bunch of strings, actually a little closer together. And there's like a little girl peeling over her shoulder to watching her tune. But, so this general form was, known in late classical times too.
How would one go about learning to play it?
I just taught myself, really. I just, there's no, I had a Ethiopian lyre once that I fooled around with. I bought it in Europe years ago, so I listened to things. So there's, you just have to do your own technique. I just would use the pick. And also, one could also stop the strings too. Yeah, so you can get a lot of different sounds.
To borrow all the techniques.
Yeah, whatever you can. Now, I'm sure they would have done whatever they can to, please their audience. And when you hear of somebody being moved by lyre playing, and there were, I think Antony, as in Antony and Cleopatra, was so fond of some lyre player singer. Of course, they were saying at the same time that he allowed him to do tribute of a whole city. He gave him a whole city he could tax. He was so fond of it. He was a big spendthrift anyway.
Hey, cool.
But obviously, the guy did more than, if he really, So that's the whole thing. That's the kind of fun thing about an instrument like this, is you can explore it. I have some other lyres nowhere near as good as this that I have. So that's why I've been kind of fooling around with it for a year. And harp technique too. You could use like harp. Whatever. But to get it's good. I think it's fun to get different sounds.
I see the text. It opens it up.
Yeah.
Opens
to make
up
it something very
possibility.
distinctive. But or with another instrument. Do you have a good sense of rhythm? Can you want to rattle something? Rattle. Let's play together. I have a little instrument here. Do I have it?